Rev up your engine. All right, today we're going to change the drive belt, we used to call them fan belts, on this RAV4. The problem is there's limited workspace. I tried numerous times to get close, but no cigar. The tensioner's here, but as you can see, there's no working room here. Everything's in the way. The air conditioning line, you don't want to take half the car apart. So here's the trick. First, we're going to jack it up in the air and take the wheel off. If you can't get it from the top, get it from the bottom. Off goes the wheel. And we'll take this cover off here. It's in the way. We pull it off. Now we can access the belt assembly. Now, unfortunately with this, you need a special tool. A universal drive belt remover comes with a bunch of sockets, so you can get a long lever. And in this case, on the very end up in the top, there's a 14mm socket that fits on. So then when you pull it, it loosens the whole thing. So then the old belt comes off at the top. Then you feed the new one in from the top and go to the bottom. Now we got it slipped on, but here's the reason why. Stick your fingers up there now. You really need two guys. As you can see his fingers up there wiggling around. He held it on the top of the alternator as I slipped it on here. It's almost impossible to do this by yourself with one guy because it'll keep popping up. Now it's on nice and tight. Here's the top. You can see there's no working room there. You gotta go from the bottom. Now here's the gear wrench set. You can see it comes with a bunch of stuff. This one was 14. This is the piece that makes it go. And this is the extension, so you don't kill yourself trying to put it on. Then we'll put the plastic crap back on, or at least they're supposed to. These things have a tendency of snapping back in, so you gotta snap them back out and then push them in. Then they snap in. Snaps in, we'll put the wheel back on. Then we'll start her up. A new smooth belt. Take it for a spin. It's relatively quiet, but I can hear a little wheel bearing noise. We're gonna go a little faster and go back and forth. Well, it's not really bad. If it was really worn out, when you swerve to the right, the weight of the car would make the noise louder, and when you swerve to the other side, it would get quieter. So they're just starting to wear. It's nothing outrageous. So here we go down Tobacco Road, our little drag strip. See what it sounds once we get going by the airport. If it's getting louder or quieter, run smooth other than the crack in the windshield. And the noise, I can hear it a little bit more, and it's coming from the back. The right rear wheel bearing is making a little bit of noise. Nothing outrageous, but that's typical because when you're driving down the road, you can see potholes in front of you, but it's often the right rear tire that hits the big holes because you can't see what's happening in the right rear. And that's always the first wheel bearing to wear out on these things. Now, it's nothing outrageous. We're going to look at the tires when we get back to see how they're wearing, but I wouldn't particularly worry about it. Sometimes it's better to go from the bottom instead of the top, and sometimes even Scotty needs a helper to get those stupid serpentine belts on. He tried. He kept taking the old one off, couldn't get the new one on, but he could get the old one back on because it had stretched somewhat. You'll find new belts smaller than the stretch belt, and there's only a limited amount of pivoting that an automatic tensioner can do. So you're better to have another guy, because I did one of these about 6 months ago by myself. Nobody helped me. I was cursing and swearing. It took me an hour and a half, even with all my tools. As long as you got somebody to hold the top on so it doesn't keep falling off, then you can do it yourself and save a bunch of money. You call up a dealer, ask them what they're going to charge. They'll charge you hundreds for doing this job. You can easily do it yourself. And there's a lot of stores out there like AutoZone that they'll loan you a tool like this. You give them your credit card, they just put charge on it. Then when you bring the tool back, they give you the charge back, and you don't even have to buy the tool. Now you know how to fix something yourself. Not that hard to do if you know how to do it from the bottom up instead of the top down. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Aiden Roos says, Scotty, what's your opinion on 1.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder GM engines, Equinox and Train? Not a fan. Hey, even bigger engines that GM put in that were turbocharged would blow. I've seen the 2-liter ones blow all the time. The smaller an engine you turbocharge, it's a GM product, the faster it's going to wear out. That's just a plain fact. All the turbocharger does is ram more air into the engine. And what it is, it's the same as increasing the compression. More pressure in the engine, it will wear out faster. I'm not a fan of that stuff. White Hammer says, Scotty, I want to make my Civic Si 2012 faster, but still naturally aspirated. What can I do? The only thing you could do then would be to rebuild the engine and beef it up, and that costs a small fortune. The only thing to really make it faster is to put either a supercharger or turbocharger, if you're going to add something to it. Supercharger, because you don't have to worry about changing the exhaust system and all that crap. But But if you really want to make a car faster, actually faster, and you don't want to supercharge or turbocharge it, you got to rebuild the engine, beef it out, and that costs a small fortune. There's no way out of it. None of the gimmicks aren't going to do diddly squat. Right out as 2010 Honda Odyssey. Should I disable the VCM at 175,000 miles? I would have done it before, but definitely do it now because that makes them burn oil. I had a guy bring me one in Rhode Island a few months ago, and his car was burning oil. Honda dealer said, you need a new engine. We're going to sell you a new engine. It's going to cost you $7,000, blah, 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 right? He had the VCM disabled, and it stopped burning oil. He was lucky he caught it early enough, and he had like 120,000 miles on the engine. I would if you want the engine to last forever. Yes, you'll get a little bit worse gas mileage. Yes, but you'll have more power. It won't wear the engine out. Engines cost so much money. Who cares about a little bit of gas mileage? Guy told me he lost about 2.5 miles a gallon on the highway. So what the heck? It's going to last longer. With the price of cars today, the average car is 45 grand. Disable it. Who cares about a little gas mileage here or there? Ian says, my name's Alex. Scotty, can I put ATP 205 reset on my power steering pump? In most cars, you can. Now, you can't put it in like ones that use mineral oil, but most of the Japanese and American ones just use regular power steering fluid, right? You don't put much in. You can only put in like 2 or 3 ounces max to try to seal leaks to lubricate them. You can't put a whole bunch in, but you can use 2 or 3 ounces, and I've seen it help. Just understand one thing. Power steering pumps work at tremendous pressure, sometimes as much as 1,500 pounds per square inch pressure. A lot of times, no sealer is going to stop a leak with that kind of pressure. If it's on the intake side, yeah, but if it's on the power steering rack, generally you're going to have to replace them, and the sealer won't stop a leak on them. Shadow Kid Gaming says, Scotty, I got an 87 Dodge Shelby Charger with 2.2 liter turbocharged 4-banger. I assume given its age, it's not GDI, but should I use GF6 oil for it since it's a Turbo 4? Yes, I would. Those are interesting cars. You know, Shelby had a deal going with Dodge, and they made these crazy turbocharged cars, right? And it's only a 2.2 liter 4, but it can get up and go for its time. It's nothing compared to today. You can get a turbocharged Mustang 4-cylinder that puts out 350. Yours is nowhere near that. But yes, I would use that oil because it's made for turbocharged cars, and it's a better oil anyways. You just have to use the one that's made for the old style one. You have to use the GF6 oil that's the same viscosity as yours was. That's the only thing you have to worry about. You can't use the real lightweight stuff. The Adolfo Flores channel says our old Dodge vans worth fixing up. 90s, like the B Series with the V8 5.9. Those are good engines, right? They're gas hogs. Talking about a 90s van. Depends where you are. If you're up north, those things were rust buckets. You go under, you see that frame is all rotted away, run away. It would need a frame off restoration, which costs a fortune. Now, if you live in New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, or you can go buy one there and it's not rusted, go right ahead. Those things can run forever and you can still get parts for them, right? But check closely that frame rot. And if they're rotten, walk away. Do not buy one of those old vans that's a rust bucket because it's worth absolutely nothing. Guys pay money for one and they get them in New Mexico or Arizona or Texas or most of California as long as you're not in the salty coast by the ocean. They can be fun to drive around in, but if they're rotten, run. Vonamay C says, Scotty, I got 2 children and need an SUV. What SUV do you recommend? Everyone and their brother wants an SUV. So the prices are... Now, if you don't care about money, get a Toyota SUV. They're the best ones in the market. And the Hondas are good too. They're really good vehicles. But the prices have gone insane on SUVs. Totally insane. You know, if you don't care about price, Toyotas or Highlanders, whatever you want to get, Rav4, what size you want, they make excellent vehicles, can last a really long time. But they're priced out of this world everywhere because everybody wants an SUV these days. And you're never going to get a good price with the prices the way that they are today. I'm telling you, you look at a sedan, you can get a much better price. And you're going to get better gas mileage too. SUVs are high up in the air. Realize they all get crappy gas mileage unless they're hybrid because they're high up in the air. The lower you go, the better the gas mileage. The SUVs are higher. Slow Tuna says, got a question. Why do you hate GM? I don't hate any of these people. I dislike many of the products they make because they do a lousy job. GM is a giant corporation that's dead from the neck up. They've made so many bad decisions. They've cheated people with that ignition switch thing where they hit it for years that the ignitions are going out and they'd stall while you're going down the road and people were killed. Dead from the neck up corporation that just keeps trying to make money off of people. Now they say, we're going to electrify, blah, blah, blah. because they see the wind's blowing, they jump on the bandwagon, right? Now, when I was a kid, they made good cars. In the 60s, they made great cars. My father, I asked him decades ago, even then, let's say in the 80s, best thing he ever told me was buy a Toyota. They've had a Corolla, and they ended up having 3 of them in the end of their lives. They'd wear out, and then they'd get another one. And he said, best cars we ever had. I said, what about all the Chevys we had as kids? He said, your grandfather, my grandfather was a mechanic at the shop. My father wasn't a mechanic. He'd barely tie his own shoelaces. He was a businessman. He said, your grandfather's always working on this thing. Something's always going wrong. Brakes, whatever, tune-ups. He said, we don't do anything to the Toyotas but change the oil. They don't tell you something about the difference, what happened to GM. Since the 60s, they've been going downhill steadily. There's no arguing that. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.